Before we begin, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe. Enjoy the story. The night wrapped the city in a cold mist as James Carter gazed at the distant lights of his glass-walled mansion. From above, he watched life carry on. Cars gliding through the avenues, people walking briskly, lights flickering in unfamiliar windows. The world kept turning, yet inside that silent house, everything felt frozen in time. His eyes were fixed on the darkness of the horizon, but his mind was anchored in the past. Emily, his wife, stood before him once more, not in flesh and blood, but in the vivid memory of the day she left. "I don't love you anymore. I can't stay here. I'm leaving, and don't ever try to find me." Her words still echoed like sharp blades, cutting through his soul. He remembered the cold expression on her face, the way she gripped her suitcase firmly, determined never to return. The worst part wasn't watching her walk away with another man. It was the empty promise she left behind for Noah, their son. "I'll come back to see you, my love." But 2 months had passed. 2 months of silence, of unanswered questions, of a void growing inside him like an abyss. Noah, only 9 years old, tried to be strong, but his eyes betrayed his longing. He asked about his mother constantly, with the innocence of someone who still believed the world was fair. "What happened to Mom? Does she still love us?" James never had the heart to tell him the truth. How could he shatter the image Noah had of his mother? How could he tell him that she had simply left them behind? So he smiled, even when everything inside him screamed. "Your mom is an amazing person, son. She's always been fun, adventurous, and so kind. She just needs some time. She'll be back soon." On the second floor, surrounded by scattered toys and open picture books, Noah Carter lay in bed, holding his tablet. Sleep weighed on his eyelids, but his restless mind refused to let go. He turned from one side to the other, hugging the teddy bear his mother had given him on a past birthday. Then suddenly, a soft sound filled the room. Pling! The tablet screen lit up, casting a faint glow over his face in the dark. Noah frowned, his curiosity piqued, and swiped his finger across the screen. When he read the message that appeared, his heart started pounding. "Son, can we meet tomorrow? Go to our favorite ice cream shop, but ride your bike. Don't tell your dad. I want to surprise him." Noah's eyes lit up. A warm, joyful feeling spread through his chest. His mother was back. Without hesitation, he typed a quick response, his thoughts spinning like a carousel of emotions. "Yes, Mom. I missed you so much. I'm so happy you're back." The message was sent, and Noah stared at the screen, waiting for a reply. But nothing came. He didn't mind. What mattered was that the next day he would see his mom again. A pure, innocent smile brightened his face. He closed the tablet and lay back down, hugging his pillow tightly. His heart pounded with excitement, and for the first time in months, he fell asleep with hope. The next day, at exactly 3:30 in the afternoon, Noah Carter jumped out of the black car that always picked him up from school. The ride home had felt twice as long, not because of traffic, but because his mind was buzzing with anxious thoughts. Today was the day. He was going to see his mom. Rushing through the mansion's grand entrance hall, he darted up the stairs, ignoring the voice of Mrs. Helen, the housekeeper, calling him for a snack. He burst into his room and shut the door, his heart racing with excitement. He quickly changed into his most comfortable outfit, a blue t-shirt and denim shorts, then slipped on his sneakers and grabbed his bike from the corner of the room. Before leaving, he walked over to the window and peeked at the mansion's massive iron gates. His dad's car wasn't there. He took a deep breath, a strange mix of guilt and excitement churning in his stomach. Was he doing something wrong? He wanted to tell his dad, but Mom had said it was a surprise. And more than anything, he missed her so much. Skipping down the stairs 2 at a time, Noah stopped in the kitchen, where Mrs. Helen was drying a teacup. I'm going to ride my bike around the block and then meet Oliver at the ice cream shop, he said casually, as if it were just another normal day. Helen smiled, suspecting nothing. All right, sweetheart, but don't stay out too late. Your dad doesn't like it when you're out after dark. I promise I won't be long. Noah opened the door, grabbed his bike, and pedaled away quickly, feeling the wind rush against his face. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from pure exhilaration. Time passed. The sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. It was late afternoon when Oliver, Noah's best friend, arrived at the Carter mansion. "Hi, Mrs. Helen. Is Noah home?" The housekeeper looked at him, surprised. "What? But he said he was meeting you at the ice cream shop." Oliver frowned. "What? But I never made any plans with him." Mrs. Helen's expression shifted. A hint of concern flickered in her eyes. "He said he was going for a bike ride before heading to the ice cream shop," she explained, quickly grabbing her phone and dialing Noah's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. No answer. Oliver pulled his own phone from his pocket and tried calling too. Nothing. Noah wasn't picking up. Helen felt a tightness in her chest. She tried to stay calm, reasoning that maybe he had just forgotten his phone on silent mode. "Maybe he's already at the ice cream shop," Oliver suggested, though there was an edge of uncertainty in his voice. "Let's check." Oliver rushed out, sprinting down the block to the ice cream shop Noah loved. He scanned the place, checking every table, every corner. Nothing. He hurried back to the mansion, an uneasy feeling spreading in his chest. "He's not there." Helen, now visibly worried, called Noah's phone again. Still no answer. She began reaching out to the neighbors, asking if anyone had seen him, but no one knew anything. The search intensified. Friends and house staff started scouring the nearby streets, calling his name, asking shopkeepers and passing drivers. But there was no sign of Noah Carter. The boy had simply vanished. The phone rang only once before James Carter picked up. "Mr. Carter, Noah, he's gone." Mrs. Helen's panicked voice came through the line. A chill ran down James's spine. What do you mean, gone?" "He said he was going for a bike ride and then meeting Oliver for ice cream, but Oliver came here looking for him, and since then we've been calling, searching. He's not answering, and no one has seen him." James shot up from his chair so fast that the sound echoed through his office. Everything around him faded. The papers on his desk, the voices of his colleagues, the city outside, it all blurred into nothing. "I'm coming home. Now." He hung up without waiting for a response and rushed out of the building. By the time he arrived home, he was met with the anxious faces of Mrs. Helen and Oliver, who looked just as lost as he felt. "Have you called all his friends? The school? The neighbors?" James asked, his voice hoarse with anxiety. Helen nodded. "Yes, sir. No one knows anything." James ran a hand down his face, trying to gather his thoughts. Where could his son be? Noah was a calm, responsible boy. He had never given them reason to worry. He always let them know where he was going, always called if he was running late. He grabbed his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in months. Emily. It rang once, twice, 3 times. No answer. He tried again. Nothing. James felt his stomach churn. What if it was her? What if Emily had come back to take him? But why? Why now? With no other options, he grabbed his car keys and drove straight to the nearest police station. The cold, impersonal atmosphere of the precinct only heightened James's impatience. He paced back and forth while the officer at the desk typed information into the computer. "Mr. Carter, I understand your concern, but disappearances of children this age usually resolve themselves," the officer said in a neutral tone. "Sometimes they stay at a friend's house, forget to call, or lose track of time." James clenched his fists. "You don't understand. My son isn't like that. He would never disappear without telling me." The officer sighed. We can only launch a formal investigation after 24 hours. James felt a crushing weight in his chest. 24 hours? That was an eternity. What if Noah was in danger right now? But what if he was kidnapped? What if his mother took him without my permission? He pressed, his fear now laced with anger. The officer studied him carefully. Do you have any evidence of an abduction? A ransom demand? Did anyone see him being taken? James shut his eyes, frustration burning in his throat. He had nothing, no proof, just an overwhelming instinct that something was very, very wrong. Then I suggest you keep looking, the officer said. Talk to neighbors, friends, family. In most cases, kids turn up within a few hours. James didn't respond. He knew arguing would be pointless. He took a deep breath and walked out of the police station with heavy steps. If the police wouldn't act immediately, he would. Inside his car, James gripped his phone and called the best private investigation agency he knew. It rang 3 times before a deep, professional voice answered. Harper Agency. How can I help you? This is James Carter. I need the best detective you've got. A brief silence followed on the other end of the line. Understood, Mr. Carter. We'll send someone immediately. James hung up, inhaling sharply. He couldn't afford to wait. He had money, he had resources, and he would find his son at any cost. The atmosphere inside the Carter mansion was suffocating. The silence that had once been just another insignificant part of his routine now felt deafening. The weight of uncertainty pressed down on everyone, thickening the air with an unspoken desperation that grew with each passing minute without news of Noah. Then the front door opened. James Carter found himself face to face with an unexpected presence. She was not what he had imagined. Olivia Harper, the detective sent by the renowned agency, was nothing like the rigid, grim-faced investigators he had envisioned. She was tall and slender, her posture effortlessly commanding. Dressed in an elegant black trench coat over a sharply tailored blazer and slacks, she exuded quiet authority. Her brown hair was swept into a flawless bun, and her green eyes gleamed with sharp intelligence. But it wasn't just her appearance that stood out. It was the way she carried herself, the quiet confidence, the unshakable composure. Every word she spoke felt like a promise etched in stone. James felt a flicker of surprise and hesitation. A woman? He had expected someone different. Maybe an older man, someone with a military or police background, someone tough. But he had no time for second thoughts. Mr. Carter, I understand your anguish, she said, her voice firm yet compassionate. I've handled many cases like this, and I can assure you, we will find your son. James hesitated for a moment, but her eyes remained locked on his. There was an unwavering certainty in them, something that, despite himself, made him believe her. He sighed, exhausted. I have to trust you. You're my only chance. Olivia nodded, pulling out a small notepad and a pen. I need every detail you can give me. Tell me everything that happened today. Every piece of information matters. James recounted it all, how Noah had left the house, the conversation with the housekeeper, his friend showing up looking for him, the failed attempts to reach him. Olivia jotted down everything meticulously, never interrupting. When he finished, she closed the notebook and crossed her arms. And your ex-wife? Have you tried contacting her? James let out a bitter laugh. Yes, I called several times, but she didn't answer. Olivia raised an eyebrow. That's suspicious. We need to locate her as soon as possible. James nodded. He also had a strong feeling that Emily was somehow involved. I need my team to start the search immediately. Do you have an office here? James nodded again and led her to a spacious room on the ground floor. The space was impeccably organized, featuring a massive bookshelf, a polished oak desk, and a state-of-the-art computer. Olivia sat down in front of the laptop, her movements swift and precise. She grabbed her phone and dialed a number. I need an immediate trace. Cell number, Noah Carter. I want real-time location tracking and all messages sent and received in the last 24 hours. James watched her every move. She was efficient, wasting no time. Minutes later, a message came through. Olivia opened it quickly and scanned the data. Her eyes lit up. I have his phone's location. Olivia immediately stood up, grabbing her bag and heading for the door. James frowned and rushed after her. Wait, where are you going? We need to get there now. If his phone is still on, this might be our best chance to find him. James grabbed her arm, impatience surging through his chest. I'm coming with you. Olivia met his gaze for a moment. I know you're desperate, but you need to understand something. This isn't an action movie. If anything goes wrong, I need you to listen to me and follow my lead. I've done this for a long time. James nodded quickly. I just can't sit around doing nothing. She sighed and pushed the door open. All right, but stay calm. The car sliced through the night like an arrow, speeding down the dark city streets. Inside, the silence was thick, charged with tension, expectation, and fear. James Carter gripped the wheel tightly, but his mind was racing. Beside him, Olivia Harper remained composed, tracking the route on her GPS and scanning every detail around them. She had been in situations like this before, the race against time, the uncertainty, the fine line between hope and despair. James was the first to break the silence. Did you always want to be an investigator? Olivia glanced up from the screen, meeting his eyes for a brief moment before responding. No, actually, for a while, I tried to run from it. James frowned. Run from it? She sighed, turning her gaze back to the road. My father trained me from a young age. He was an elite military officer, served in covert missions. But when he came back, he was never the same. James felt the weight in her words. Did he go through something traumatic? Yes. He always said he was being watched, so he isolated himself. He bought a house deep in the woods and taught me everything he knew, how to track, how to defend myself, how to survive in the middle of nowhere. To him, it was training. But to me, it was the only way to be close to him. James noticed a flicker of nostalgia in her eyes. And then, years passed. He got older and eventually he passed away. I thought about choosing a different path, but deep down I knew I was good at this. I saw clues that others missed. And so, here I am. James remained silent for a moment. The woman sitting next to him was far more than she appeared to be. And at that moment, he realized he could trust her. Your father would be proud of you. She gave a faint smile. Thank you. But right now, let's focus on finding your son. When they arrived at the location from the tracker, the scene was desolate and eerily quiet. The road cut through an isolated area outside the city, with only a few dim lights in the distance. The only sound was the whisper of the wind rustling through the trees. Olivia was the first to step out of the car. She flicked on a flashlight and began scanning the ground. It didn't take long to find what they were looking for. Here, James ran over to her and saw Noah's small phone lying among the dried leaves. The screen was cracked, but it was still on. His heart clenched in his chest. He was here. Olivia studied the scene with trained eyes. Whoever took Noah knew we would track the phone. They dumped it on purpose. James ran a hand through his hair, feeling the panic rise. We're too late. He's already been taken somewhere else. Olivia placed a firm hand on his shoulder. We still have leads. Every detail matters. Now, I need you to help me. Do you know the phone's password? James nodded, taking the device and unlocking the screen. Olivia sat down on the edge of the road and started navigating through the apps. Then, she found something important. Look at this. James leaned in. The last message received before Noah disappeared. Son, can we meet tomorrow? Go to our favorite ice cream shop, but ride your bike. Don't tell your dad. I want to surprise him. Olivia looked at James with a serious expression. This was the last message he received, and it came from his mother. A chill ran down James's spine. But that doesn't make sense. I tried calling Emily, and she didn't answer. Does this number belong to her? James shook his head. No, unless she changed her number and never told me. Olivia frowned. Something's not right. If it really was Emily, why wouldn't she answer your calls? Why would she ask Noah to keep it a secret? A lump formed in James's throat. You think someone pretended to be her? Olivia didn't answer immediately, but the truth was clear. We need to get to that ice cream shop. Now. James nodded and sprinted to the car. They were getting closer to the truth. The ice cream shop was nearly empty when James Carter and Olivia Harper rushed inside. The sweet aroma of chocolate and vanilla felt completely out of place against the tension thick in the air. James scanned the room, his frantic eyes searching for any sign of his son. He had been here. He really had been here. Olivia approached the counter and pulled out her investigator's badge. The young employee, wearing a blue apron and a cap with the shop's logo, looked at her curiously. Good evening. We're private investigators, and we need to see the security camera footage. A man, presumably the manager, stepped forward. I'm the manager. What's going on? James stepped closer, his voice urgent. My son was kidnapped. He was here today. We need to see the footage. The manager frowned, studying the desperation in James's eyes. He hesitated for a moment, then gave a quick nod. Come with me. They followed him to a small back room, where a monitor displayed the security feeds from cameras positioned around the shop. The manager grabbed the keyboard and entered the date and an estimated time. The footage began playing. On the screen, Noah appeared, riding his bike up to the ice cream shop. He hopped off excitedly, parked his bike in the rack, and looked around, probably searching for his mother. Then, a black car pulled up beside him. James's heart pounded. That's him, he murmured. On the footage, Noah hesitated for a moment before stepping closer to the vehicle, maybe believing Emily was inside. And then, the car door flew open violently. A tall, muscular man jumped out and grabbed Noah with brutal force. The boy struggled, kicking, trying desperately to break free, but the kidnapper was too strong. Within seconds, Noah was thrown into the car, and the vehicle sped away. James gripped the table to keep himself from collapsing. His chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. He had just watched his son being taken right before his eyes, and he couldn't do anything to stop it. My God, he whispered, running his hands over his face. This is real. He was actually kidnapped. His eyes were red, overwhelmed with pain and desperation. What did they want? Who knew that was the place Emily always took him? Could she be involved? He muttered, turning to Olivia. The detective placed a steady hand on his shoulder, her voice calm but firm. Hey, look how far we've come. Now we have a face. We have a car. We're closer to finding Noah. James took a deep breath. She was right. He forced himself to steady his thoughts and trust her. Olivia rewound the footage, watching the scene again with trained eyes, scanning for every possible clue. Then, something caught her attention. Here. She paused the video and zoomed in on the screen. In the reflection of the car's side mirror, the kidnapper's face was visible. We've got him. She quickly snapped a picture of the screen with her phone and sent it straight to her team. I need an ID on this man. Check criminal records, last known whereabouts, any relevant information. Top priority. They stood there in silence, waiting. Every minute felt like an eternity. Then the response came in. David Foster, ex-convict, served time for robbery and assault. Currently on parole, residing in a halfway house. James stared at Olivia, confused. An ex-con? Why would he take Noah? Olivia kept her eyes on her phone screen, her mind racing. That's what we're going to find out now. Olivia looked at James. We need to find him, and fast. Night had fallen over the city, and the Carter mansion was steeped in an oppressive silence. James and Olivia had returned home, but resting was impossible. James paced back and forth in his office, an untouched glass of whiskey in his hands. Every second without news of Noah was pure torment. Olivia sat on the couch, eyes locked on her phone screen, waiting for any updates from her team. She had handled plenty of difficult cases before, but something about this one unsettled her. There were missing pieces in this puzzle. The night stretched on without answers, and when the first rays of sunlight began to creep through the windows, Olivia made a decision. I'm going to the halfway house. I need to understand who this David Foster really is. James didn't argue. He knew he had to trust her. The halfway house was in a remote part of the city, surrounded by high walls and discreet security. Olivia parked outside and walked into the building, where she was greeted by the administrator. We're investigating the whereabouts of a former resident, David Foster. Can you help me? The administrator crossed his arms and sighed. David Foster. Yes, I remember him well. He was a cunning man, smart, manipulative, but he was never really interested in change. What do you mean? David wasn't like the others here. He had a plan. He used to say he'd get out of here, become a personal trainer, and marry a rich woman. If she's beautiful, even better, he'd say. But money, that was always the real goal. That's what mattered to him. A chill ran down Olivia's spine. Did he ever mention anyone specific? The man thought for a moment before answering. No, but he always used to say that when he found the right person, he'd get married and live the luxurious life he had always dreamed of. He didn't want to struggle to survive anymore. He wanted a shortcut, and he found Emily. Olivia thanked the administrator and left immediately. Now, she was sure of one thing. David Foster wasn't acting alone. Emily was involved. Back at the Carter mansion, Olivia didn't waste a second. I need to see all your home security footage, James. James called for the housekeeper and asked her to bring the files. Olivia started reviewing the recordings from the past few months. She sped through the uneventful days, scanning for anything unusual, until something caught her attention. She froze the video. There he was, David Foster, dressed in the black uniform of a personal trainer. He moved in and out of the mansion as if he belonged there. And he was always with Emily. The glances, the subtle touches, the closeness. James held his breath. They were having an affair. Olivia nodded, and she ran away with him. But then came the question that loomed like a shadow over everything. Why kidnap Noah? If Emily wanted a new life with David, why take the child? What was the purpose? Something still didn't add up. Then, Olivia's phone rang. On the other end, her team sounded urgent. We have information. Go ahead. We tracked Emily's credit cards. Purchases were made in the mountain region. If she's with David, they're probably hiding out there. Olivia closed her eyes for a brief second. Finally, a solid lead. She turned to James. Do you have any properties in that area? James hesitated. Yes, actually, it was my parents' vacation home, but no one's been there in years. Olivia crossed her arms. Then it's the perfect hiding spot. James felt his stomach twist. You think they're there? Olivia met his gaze, unwavering. I don't think. I know. She grabbed the car keys and looked at him. Let's go. Let's get your son back. James took a deep breath and nodded. They were heading straight into the wolf's den. The car sped down the highway, cutting through the dark, winding roads toward the vacation house in the mountains. The tension in the air was suffocating. Every passing minute meant Noah was further away, more at risk. Inside the vehicle, Olivia kept her phone in hand, relaying information to her team. We've sent all the evidence to the police. They're mobilizing a task force in the mountain region. James didn't respond. His fingers clenched the steering wheel tightly, his jaw locked. This was a nightmare. Emily had betrayed his trust, destroyed their family, and now she had put their son's life in danger. All he wanted was to find Noah, before it was too late. As they arrived at the vacation house, James and Olivia entered cautiously. The place was dark, silent. Dust filled the air, revealing that it hadn't been used in years. But there were recent signs of movement, footprints, scuff marks on the floor, and the front door slightly ajar. Then they saw her, Emily. She was tied to the couch, her wrists and ankles bound with rope. Her eyes were red and swollen, her expression a mix of fear, regret, and desperation. James rushed to her, quickly untying the knots. The moment she was free, Emily collapsed into his arms, sobbing. "Forgive me, please. Please forgive me." James gripped her shoulders and pushed her back slightly, his eyes burning with fury and anguish. "Where is Noah?" Emily took a shaky breath, struggling to steady her voice. "David, he tricked me. I was a fool." James didn't say a word. He just waited. She needed to tell him everything. "I fell in love with him. He was charming, attentive. He made me believe we could live a simple life, away from all the pressure of money and status." Her voice cracked for a moment. "But it was all a lie. He never loved me. He just wanted your money." Olivia crossed her arms, watching Emily with a sharp, analytical gaze. "And then he kidnapped Noah." Emily nodded, quickly wiping her tears. "He found out something." She turned to James, pure terror in her eyes. "He took our son into the forest. He said that if Noah didn't tell him where your grandfather's treasure was, he would kill me." James frowned. "Treasure?" Emily stared at him. "Yes, he believes there's a hidden treasure here." James ran a hand through his hair, trying to make sense of it all. And then, a memory struck him like lightning. "My God!" Olivia stepped closer. "What is it?" James swallowed hard. "I remember, one day I was talking to Noah in the kitchen, and David was nearby. I didn't even realize he was listening." Emily's eyes widened. "What were you talking about?" "We were talking about my father. He used to tell Noah this crazy story." James closed his eyes, replaying the scene in his mind. "If you or your dad ever need it, you know where it is. But it's a secret, okay?" His eyes flew open, a chill running through his veins. "My father told Noah that he hid money in the mountain house for emergencies. But it was just a story. I never took it seriously." Olivia frowned. "What if David did?" James nodded. "That's it. He heard everything. He thinks Noah knows where the money is." Emily clutched her face, terrified. "But does that money actually exist?" James hesitated. "My father was already very old when he said that. My mother would never have let him hide money like that. But," he trailed off, lost in thought, "but I know where my father used to camp with Noah. If he hid something, it would be there." Olivia grabbed her radio and relayed the information to the police. "Change of plans. The kidnapper and the child are in the forest. Initiate search near the old Carter family campsite." A swift response came from the other end. "Understood. Units en route." Olivia turned to James. "Let's go." Emily grabbed his arm. "Please, bring our son back." James didn't answer. He had already lost Emily, but he wouldn't lose Noah. By the time the police and investigators arrived at the designated spot in the forest, night had begun to fall. The surroundings were eerie. Towering trees swayed in the wind, casting restless shadows. Every step forward was taken with caution. Then they found him, Noah Carter. He was handcuffed in the back of a rusted pickup truck, his wide eyes filled with terror. The boy was shaking, but when he saw the commotion, he tried to scream. His voice was weak but loud enough for his father to hear. "Dad!" James Carter didn't hesitate. He broke past the police line, sprinting toward his son, ignoring Olivia's sharp commands and the officers shouting at him to stop. He only wanted to hold Noah, to protect him, to get him out of there. That was when David Foster emerged from the trees, holding a shovel, ready to dig. The moment he saw James, his expression shifted from shock to rage. He had thought James would come alone, and he wasn't about to lose everything without a fight. In a swift motion, he pulled out a gun. James barely had time to register the danger. Everything happened in seconds, but Olivia had been expecting this. With flawless reflexes, Olivia drew her gun with precision and fired a single shot. The bullet struck David's arm, sending his weapon clattering to the ground. The criminal screamed in pain, stumbling back as the police moved in swiftly, surrounding him. He was tackled to the ground, handcuffed and restrained, but he kept shouting, "The treasure is mine. It's real. I know it's real." His eyes were wild, consumed by obsession. James stepped closer, still breathless from the adrenaline, his gaze filled with pure contempt. "There is no treasure." David let out a deranged laugh, still struggling against the officers. "You're lying." James leaned in, his voice firm and laced with fury. "My father wasn't in his right mind when he told that story. You eavesdropped on a conversation, twisted it, and built this entire delusion in your head." David fell silent, breathing heavily, and then James delivered the final blow. "The only truth here is that you manipulated a woman, kidnapped a child, and nearly shot a father." David Foster didn't respond. The officers dragged him away, shoving him into the back of the patrol car. The nightmare was finally over. James immediately turned to Noah. The boy was in shock, but alive. James pulled him into a tight embrace, holding him as if he would never let go. "It's okay, son. I'm here. You're safe now." Noah sobbed, burying his face in his father's chest, clutching onto him as tightly as he could. "I thought I'd never see you again." James held him even closer. "I would never give up on you. Never." That night felt endless, but at the same time, it was the end of a nightmare. After hours of statements and medical checkups, James finally took Noah home. Emily was there, waiting for her son, still shaken but grateful. Noah hesitated for a moment, then threw himself into his mother's arms. "I missed you, Mom." She let out a quiet sob. "Forgive me, my love. I will never abandon you again." James watched the scene and sighed. He still didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing: his son was safe, and that was all that mattered. Later that night, James Carter sat in a quiet bar in town, accompanied by Olivia Harper. The investigator seemed more at ease now, holding a glass of whiskey as she casually observed the movement around them. "So, was this the first time you saved a millionaire from a criminal obsessed with an imaginary treasure?" James teased, flashing a tired smile. Olivia let out a soft laugh. "It was definitely a unique experience." He studied her for a moment, realizing just how remarkable she was. Strong, determined, intelligent. "I never would have done it without you." She lifted her glass in a toast. "I know." She smirked playfully. James chuckled and clinked his glass against hers. The case was closed, but that night felt like the beginning of something new. The night was calm when James Carter finally had a moment alone with Emily. After everything they had been through, this conversation was inevitable. They sat on the mansion's veranda, gazing at the distant city lights. The cool night breeze gently rustled the trees, and for a moment, the silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was full of unspoken meaning. Emily was the first to speak. "You must hate me." James let out a weary sigh, but there was no anger in his eyes. "No, I forgive you." She turned to him, surprised. "Seriously? After everything?" "Yes, I can't hold on to resentment forever. I don't want that for myself, and I definitely don't want that for Noah." She lowered her head, moved by his generosity. James continued, "But I also know that after everything, there's nothing left between us." Something inside me changed. I'm not the same man I was when you left. Emily nodded slowly, absorbing his words. She knew he was right. I've changed too. And maybe I stopped loving you a long time ago. I just didn't want to admit it. She forced a small smile. I think deep down I was afraid to move on, afraid to be alone. But now, I see that I need to start over. James took her hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. Then start over, but never walk away from Noah again. This time, her smile was sincere. Never again. That night, Emily made the decision to move somewhere new, where she could rebuild her life. But unlike last time, she never disappeared from Noah's life again. The bond between the three of them became something new, one built on respect and friendship. And James, for the first time in a long time, felt at peace. Days passed, and James and Olivia Harper continued to see each other. First, it was casual. A dinner here, a walk there. But with every meeting, James only grew more certain of what he was starting to feel. She was different from anyone he had ever met. Strong, intelligent, determined. Yet, at the same time, she had this rare ability to see his pain and understand him, without needing words. And what had begun as gratitude soon turned into something much deeper. They went out a few more times, laughed together, shared stories about life, and then a special night arrived. It was a starry evening, and James had planned something truly special for Olivia. A sophisticated lakeside dinner, where the stars reflected off the water like tiny diamonds. Olivia noticed he was more serious than usual. "You're acting weird," she teased, raising an eyebrow. James chuckled, but his expression was filled with emotion. "Maybe I'm nervous." Before she could ask why, he stood up, picked up a beautiful bouquet of red roses, and, to her utter shock, knelt down in front of her. Olivia's eyes widened as she covered her mouth with her hands. "James, what are you doing?" He smiled, taking her hand gently. "You came into my life at my lowest moment. You helped me when I was lost. But after the storm passed, you stayed." Her eyes began to glisten with tears. "Your smile captivates me. Your strength inspires me. I've never met anyone like you." He took a deep breath before saying the words that would change everything. "Will you be my girlfriend?" A moment of silence, filled only by the sound of the wind and Olivia's pounding heart. Then, she smiled, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Yes, that's all I want." James stood up, and Olivia threw her arms around him, pulling him into a deep, passionate kiss. There, under the stars, two hearts that had endured so much pain finally found their way to each other. In the months that followed, James felt something he hadn't experienced in a long, long time. True happiness. Noah was safe and happy. Emily was forging a new path. And Olivia was by his side. Sometime later, they decided to go camping. The sky was clear, bursting with stars, and the cool mountain breeze carried the fresh scent of damp earth and burning wood. The campfire crackled softly, casting flickering shadows across the campsite. James Carter, Noah, and Olivia Harper sat together, at the very spot where James's grandfather had always claimed to have buried a treasure. Of course, it was never about money. James knew that, but something about this moment felt different. There was a pull, a desire to uncover the truth. Noah was especially excited, gripping his flashlight tightly as his father finished digging the hole where his grandfather had supposedly hidden something. "Do you think there's really something here, Dad?" Noah asked, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. James smiled, feeling lighter than he had in years. "Only one way to find out." The shovel hit something solid. The sound was different, distinct from the dirt and rocks. Olivia stepped closer, dusting off her hands. "Looks like we found something." Noah tightened his grip on the flashlight as James carefully dug around the object. Then, with one final effort, he pulled out a small, aged wooden chest. Noah looked up at them, his face filled with amazement. Grandpa was right. He really did hide something here. James and Olivia exchanged a knowing glance before nodding. "Go ahead, Noah," James said, his voice steady. "Open it." Carefully, Noah lifted the lid of the chest. What they found inside wasn't gold, nor jewels, nor money. It was something far more valuable. Family photo. And beside it, a handwritten letter, aged and yellowed by time. James picked up the letter carefully, his hands trembling slightly. It was his father's handwriting. He took a deep breath before reading it aloud. "If times are hard, remember that the most valuable treasure we have is family. As long as you stay together, you can overcome anything. Never forget how much I love you." Silence fell over the campsite. A single tear rolled down James's cheek, and he felt his chest warm with emotion. His father had always known. Olivia gently touched his hand, offering him a soft, understanding smile. Noah simply wrapped his arms around his father. "I love you, Dad." James closed his eyes for a moment and hugged him back tightly, feeling a happiness and completeness he hadn't felt in years. There, beneath the stars, he realized that of all the things he had lost and gained in life, the most important had always been right beside him. The true treasure wasn't something you could count, store, or spend. The true treasure was love, family, and the new opportunities life had to offer. And he would never forget that again. If you enjoyed this video, let us know in the comments. Your opinion is very important to us. Don't forget to subscribe. A big hug, and see you in the next video.